now I have with me here a very special guest. I'm delighted to um, be hosting an interview with the one and only Elizabeth Fost. So here we go. Hello, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining.
Hang on. I'm not muted. Hello, hiya.
Hiya.
Let me just turn you off a little wee bit. There we go. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Good, good, good.
So how are you?
Oh, all right. Yes, slightly flustered. I've been trying to put together an IKEA desk.
Oh,
And just following the instructions is hard enough. And you get so far and think, oh my God, have I done it the wrong way around? However, I think I've done it right. So it's not finished though. I was hoping to get it all done by now, but it's not. So never mind.
right. So thank you very much for joining my podcast.
That's all right. No problem.
And what I always like to do is I always like to start from the very beginning, like talk about your background and what led to you in wanting to present children's television.
Right. Okay. Well, let me just adjust the view because it's a little bit let's do it gallery. That's better. You're a bit bigger now. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. So the very beginning. Well, I went to university, or Polytechnic as it was then, and did a performing arts degree. Where I majored in drama, but when I came out, I felt I wanted to do something a bit more. I wanted a bit more of a formal training, so I then did a postgraduate at drama school. But I suppose I've always been I've always been interested in working with children. My mother used to run a nursery school, and I think that's probably came for it. So I kind of grew up with, oh, I don't know, collecting bottle tops and toilet roll inserts, and my dad would spend Sundays trying to work out how to make a snowman out of the inside of a kitchen roll or something that they could do the following week. So the other kind of making things and being around with young children, I think I've always had a propensity for that. Um, and I also my mother was involved with a puppet group um, in Totnes, where I come from, in Devon, and I'd sort of helped out and done bits and pieces with her as well. So when I left drama school, my first job was with a puppet theatre, with Norwich Puppet Theatre, working on a Christmas show there as a puppeteer, which wasn't something I'd ever done professionally before, but it was quite fun. Um, and that taught me a lot. And it sort of began to take me, if you like, into the world of children's theatre. I think there's always been a bit of a snobbery in the theatre world about doing work for children. In the sense of it, sort of people, certainly in the old days, would see doing theatre and education as it was then, or children's theatre work as something you do before you get a proper job. However, the foray into the world of the puppet theatre, I think, led me into begin to appreciate the value of the work for young children. And fairly soon after that, I joined a touring children's theatre called Lambeth Children's Theatre. And I spent several years with them doing various different shows, working mostly in primary schools. So I had a very good background in working with young people, from sort of nursery up to what would now be year 6. Now, with the TV presenting, it came as a bit of a sort of offshoot, really. I'd never done any TV before I did play days. And as far as I can remember, I was trying to remember how I actually stumbled across the job in the first place. I had been to see an agent and taken my CV and talked and stuff. And she sort of said, "Oh dear, we're far too big for you. But these people are looking for presenters at the moment." And she handed me a sort of piece of paper which had Felgate Productions, as it was then, written on it, and phone number. And I pursued it. And it turned out they were looking for someone to play, now I can't remember the name, a Dotty, that's right, a character called Dot. It was the Dot Stop. So it's in the early days of Playdays, or Play Bus, as I think it might have been then, before it became Playdays. Uh, and so I did an audition for the Dot Stop. I didn't get the part, but I think I must have been put on some sort of approved list or something. I'd auditioned for Cynthia Felgate, who was um, a very big mover and shaker in children's television and the value of, good television for children. So I can't remember how many years later, but I then got a call out of the blue sometime afterwards, asking me if I'd like to audition for the Playground Stop, which I did. And I think because of they were looking for someone, the Playground Stop, I don't know if I'm sure you've seen it, videos of it. They, from time to time, would have children, but it was working with children, if you like. So you'd have kids in the studio, or you'd be out on location with children. Whereas some of the other slots were more just the characters or just the puppets. The Playground Stop was always very much a kind of doing with the kids thing. And it's something Dave had been doing for a while, Dave Benson Phillips. But I think they needed someone else to sort of broaden it out a little bit as well. So yes, I auditioned. I had to. It's a long time ago, but I think part of the audition I had to do some work with some real life kids and get them to do something, tell them the story, and get them to do some sort of activity. And yes, and then I got the job, which I was amazed at and delighted. It was, as I say, I'd never done any TV before, so it was probably the scariest thing to date that I had done. We The way the Playground Stop work would be half the program would be in the studio, and then the other half would be out on location somewhere. So yeah, I landed in the studio to do my first stage recording with the script, terrified. And the voice comes down from the gallery, just be yourself. Suddenly you have no idea what yourself is, what it even means. And my first line was to introduce myself to camera, saying, "Hello, I'm Elizabeth." And well, I've never watched that episode back because I think I was probably I was absolutely terrified. But I did find that working with the kids actually made it much easier because I was on sort of terra firma with that. So it took me a while to get used to the whole presenting thing. I suppose prior to that, I'd hidden either behind a puppet or behind an actor, certainly behind a character. And here I was having to be just me, or a sort of heightened version. So it did take quite some time for me to sort of get used to it and feel comfortable with it. I always think now I would make a far, far better presenter than I did whenever I was in my 20s or whatever I was when I was doing it. Because, as you get older, you get a much greater sense of self and, you're much more confident. But there we go. No one would employ me at my great age now for presenting children's TV. But it was quite a shock to the system. So that's kind of how I got into it, really.
Very interesting. And also, Elizabeth, talking about play days, one of the things you did on play days with Playground Stop was Makaton sign language.
That's right. Yes. Yes. And I got very interested in that. Dave Benson Phillips was also very interested. And I enjoyed the fact that, I start waving my hands around now. I enjoyed the fact that every week there was a rhyme that we would sign. And Makaton, I think, was in fairly early days then as well. There was a very lovely lady who was part of the team who sort of set it all up. I'm afraid her name escapes me now, but she used to live near Colchester in Essex. And I would go to her house a few days before filming, and we would go through the rhyme, and she would teach me the signs, which I thought was a very good thing. I very much enjoyed it. I had when I'd been at Poly at University of Middlesex, I had worked with a deaf actress there, who I directed her in her show. We were very good friends anyway. A lady called Jenny Seeley, who later went on to, and still is, she's the artistic director of Grey Eye Theatre. And although Jenny didn't sign, I think from early on, I'd sort of become aware of different ways of communicating, because when I was working with her, I had to find different ways of, so she could see me if she was lip reading and things. So it opened my eyes, if you like, to different ways of being, and different ways of communicating. So it was fairly natural going to Makaton. It sort of sparked my interest, and I actually then went on while I was doing the programs. I went on and did a couple of courses on Makaton. I think I got my first couple of qualifications using it. And then after that, I can't remember whether I was still doing play days or not at the time, but I did then go on and to the City Lit and do some work or do some learning, a qualification with a BSL. And I did do a little bit of work as a note taker for the City Lit for students. I think I've always had a fairly good sense of kind of visual. I was always into visual theatre and physical theatre and that sort of thing. And I think that really helped certainly with the sort of the idea of making pictures with your hands, if you like. So yes, that was the Makaton. I found that was a new thing that I'd never come across before. And now I'm delighted to see in schools and things it's used very, very widely. I think it's an extremely good system or communication system. And it's used very widely, and I still encounter it. And from time to time, I still use a little bit of signing, if I remember it. So yeah, that was the Makaton involvement.
What I also wanted to ask you, Elizabeth, what was it actually like working with Lizzie, the puppet?
I'm going to let you into a secret. We never really met formally. Lizzie the puppet, who was, yes, come on everybody, let's move to the music. She actually filmed her segments on a completely different time and in a completely different place to me, I'm afraid. So when in the studio, I'm going, hello, Lizzie. There's actually nobody there. I don't want to shatter any illusions, but yes, she's not actually there. So I'm afraid I very rarely, I did see the puppets on occasions, but I didn't actually get to work with her, I'm afraid. So yeah, sadly, because yeah, also though I have to say, with the bit of puppetry that I'd done already, seeing Lizzie and the Lizzie work, I did then go and do a course in at the Little Angel in using marionettes. So Playdays was an inspiration on many levels for me.
There's something else I wanted to ask you. And what I wanted to know is, what was it actually like, filming the Christmas episodes of Playdays?
Always good fun. Always good fun. I mean, I think, particularly when you have something like Christmas or a summer special, there would be great excitement. I mean, obviously they're done quite a few months in advance, months usually, I think. I'm going back a long way now. So you have to kind of fake it a little bit because, of course, it's not Christmas. It's probably more likely September or October. And that can be a bit confusing because, as I say, when you've got real children there, and they're very young children. I mean, the children we used in the studio were a little bit older than the children the program was aimed for, just because of being able to not be too overawed by the whole situation, the whole setup. But yes, I mean, it's quite hard for them to sort of, we just all had to pretend. So I would talk to them beforehand, a little bit about what we were going to do and how we were going to pretend that it was Christmas, how exciting it all would be. Summer specials were slightly easier because you'd be actually outside in the sunshine, hopefully, if the weather was good. So yeah, I mean, all these things are a great fun. I remember there was a Christmas one we recorded at Warwick Castle, and that was great. Except it's very, very dim memories, but I was we were having some sort of feast, I think, and I was a vegetarian, or I'm a vegetarian, and that was slightly awkward because we were supposed to be tucking into sort of pies and things. So yes, I can't remember how we got round it. I probably just ate some bread, but yeah, but that was fun. It was fun, always fun being out on location as well, particularly somewhere like Warwick Castle.
I actually remember one of the puppet characters on Plague Days or Playground that was the one you puppeteered, and that was Ruby.
Yeah, I've still got Ruby actually. She's in my loft. Yes, yes, there was lovely Ruby. Ruby, there was Ruby, and then after Ruby, I had a dog. A puppy. I can't remember what the puppy
Dolly
was
the
called.
dog.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, thank you. These in the loft as well. Yes, and I think I'm right in saying that Ruby the puppet was made by the lovely Christina Stevenson, who was a designer on the program at the time, and now is an extremely successful children's book author, and makes most wonderful props, for, puppets and things for her book events at book festivals. But yes, Ruby, yeah, yeah, she was a glove puppet, a hand puppet. It was often quite awkward to sort of, where it's going to sit, and she didn't have a moving mouth, so you had to, unlike Chester, Dave's puppet, who could do all that kind of sort of stuff. Ruby didn't. She was kind of like that, so therefore you had to take a bit more movement into the head and into the hands, like that, and so that gives a bit more strain. But it was that again, the puppeteering on the TV there then led me on to a few years later working for a television company up in Cardiff for several years, where we made hundreds of children's TV series, all with puppets, which all got sold abroad. So I'm not quite sure what happened to them all or where they've been. I've hardly seen them. But yeah, I spent many years then as a TV puppeteer, which I suppose Playdays was a stepping stone to that.
Also, what I wanted to know, what was it actually like? Did you ever work with Stuart Bradley?
Yes, I did. Now, he came in and did some stories, I remember. There was one about a triangle, which was a bit weird. I'm quite sure he'd written the triangle story. I remember him sitting there with a sort of stuffed triangle I think it was a triangle on his leg, saying, "This is my favorite toy." And you really? But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, he was lovely. I mean, everybody was lovely, really. It was, you know, in some ways you're sort of given the excuse to in some ways behave like a child, um, as in enjoy the playing. And I think that was one of the points of the program, was enjoying the makes and the playing, and sort of being with the children, not, obviously not behaving like a child completely, stamping my feet and crying when it all went wrong, but there was a very nice atmosphere, and we, particularly when we had the children there, it was, Stuart obviously added to this. We're trying to really create because the children were so young that we used, they couldn't fake it completely. If they weren't engaged, the camera could see that. So someone like Stuart, again, reading a story would be very good at actually engaging with them, as well as engaging with the camera too.
Because Playdays was a preschool program, I was wondering what was it like doing a program, for nursery children?
Well, I loved it, because I'm very comfortable with that sort of age group. As I say, having grown up with a mother running a nursery school playgroup, I was very comfortable with little ones. So yes, I mean, it was quite sweet, because I'd find sometimes if I'd be on a train or a bus or something, and toddlers would kind of come up to me and just talk. And I think it's because they would know, they knew my face. They would know me. Obviously, they didn't know me, but they didn't have the kind of inhibitions, because they'd see you and just think you're familiar, so just naturally would come and chat to me, which I found very charming. I like that age group very much. When my son was that sort of age, it was lovely. There's a real charm, I think, in that age, where they're sort of discovering the world. Um, it's really beautiful, and they get so excited about things, um, and that interest in all sorts of different things is wonderful. Many years later, I worked with teenagers, and the contrast, where the sort of lack of enthusiasm to sort of do
Uh,
anything, is very marked. So yeah, no, I really enjoy working with very little ones.
I've actually got something I really want to show you, Elizabeth, something that you may have seen before, and
Oh
it's this.
yes. Oh, jolly good on video. You see, that dates it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Have a look. Oh my goodness, yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
Have still seen Dave from time to time.
Mm.
We're Facebook friends, but also I bumped into him at the Edinburgh Festival a few years ago where he was doing a show, and that was lovely. It was lovely to see him. He doesn't change, he's still bouncing off the walls.
How long did it actually take, to film like a lot of Playdays episodes? Because I believe you had to film an awful lot, didn't you, before transmission?
Yeah. Um, we would film them in parts. So as I say, the episodes tended to be, I think, half an episode with one of us in the studio, the other half would be the other one out on location somewhere. So if you're in the studio, then sometimes I could film 3 episodes in a day because they would be sort of half episodes. Two would be more comfortable, which is quite hard work. It's keeping up the energy, particularly, as well as keeping up the energy of the kids you're working with. On location, it would take quite a lot longer because there's many more things to take on board. You haven't got, the lights and the cameras all set up for you. So location episodes would take longer, maybe a couple of days. We filmed quite a few of them in and around Bristol because one of the directors I worked with lived down there and had lots of contacts. So I remember filming in a primary school one weekend, which was actually quite good because it meant it was quiet, but then we brought some children in to work there too, but it wasn't too distracting. But it could take quite a long time, and particularly when you're working with the children, you have to sort of, it takes a while for them to be comfortable, and then for you to show them what they're going to be doing and have a few practice runs and that sort of thing. And it's a balance between, rehearsing, but also keeping their energy up so that they've got time for the take. So sometimes it would take a while, but the studios we could knock off, as I got more used to it, we could knock off much more quickly.
How many
Um,
years, sorry, how many filming years did you do the playground stop for?
how many years?
Mm.
Uh, I think it was about 2 or 3. I think I was doing it for. I can't really remember. It all came to a rather abrupt stop. But and play days were still going on. But that's the nature of the world of TV. But yeah, it was a couple of years, I think.
Because later you had people like Chris Jarvis, Zoe Ball, and who else? And oh yeah, few of the other presenters. I can't remember their names, but yeah.
Yes, I think Zoe Ball sort of took over from me, young
Mm.
Zoe Ball.
Yeah.
Um, and Chris Jarvis came along. Yes, I mean he's made a great career of children's TV.
Mm.
So yes, I mean the nature of the beast. Sadly, is that you go along for a while and then for no rhyme or reason things get you go and somebody else comes along. So that's that. But I made a lot of friends through it. Ellie Darville, who was Wybird, I then worked with in this company I worked with for in Cardiff. I was working with Ellie there, so we were both puppeteering. That was quite fun. And another Nick Mercer, he was on the playgrounds. No, I'm playground stop, the roundabout stop. I think I can't remember what he played. He's another one who I'm still very good friends with. And yeah, there's a few others. So there were quite overall there were quite a lot of people involved with Playdays, but the nature of the way it was filmed, the playground stop particularly, we sort of didn't really see many of the others other than the Christmas parties and things.
Um, one of the episodes of Playdays, the library stuff I seem to remember is the one. I don't know if you remember it. It's one where Charlie had like a big heavy box and he like put it down or something and had like an accident with it.
I don't remember that, I'm afraid. That'd have to be something you'd have to ask Ellie about.
Yeah, will do.
I'm sure she'd remember it.
Yeah. Did you also get to work with Will Brenton and Ian Lachlan?
I did, yes, which is interesting because they then went on to have a terrific success with Tweenies. Um, yes, actually, Will Brenton was an assistant director on several of the episodes, I remember. And there was one episode that he then directed completely himself, which was one we did about pets, I think. I remember taking my cat to the location and having to get to walk through grass. walk through long grass, which was a nightmare because he bolted and had to be was cornered trying to climb the perimeter fence by the cameraman. But yes, Will Brenton, that was lovely actually. Lovely then seeing Will going on to have such success. Ian, I didn't actually work with, but I think he was involved with Playdays, and I think it was their relation meeting there that sort of they went on and did Tweenies together. So yes, it was a sort of a good springboard, I think, for them.
Also, talking about the playground stop, the day after that was the roundabout stop, wasn't it?
Yes, I
I
think
was
so.
wondering, yeah, I was wondering what was it like working with Robin Fritz, Clive Duncan, and what's the other one? Andy Hockley.
I'm afraid I never really saw them. As I said, we were kind of, if you were in filming, then you'd film your stuff and then you'd be out and the next lot would be in. So we didn't, sadly, the only time when all the Playdays people kind of got together would be the Christmas parties. I think the roundabout stop kind of had a bit more fun and a bit more of a social life because there were quite a lot of them involved with it and people coming in and out. Whereas for me and Dave, I mean, I hardly ever saw Dave, even though I'd be handing over to him supposedly. But yeah, we hardly ever saw each other. And we did a few things together, but we were quite separate in a way, sadly. So I'm afraid I didn't really work with them.
So, when was the filming? Like, did you normally finish filming in about October, November, for the Christmas break and start again in January, or?
I think so. To be honest, I really can't remember. It was a long, long time ago. But yes, I think so. I think certainly. I mean, it wasn't all year. There were breaks in between shooting schedules. So because I would do other jobs as well. I work a lot and still do actually for Polka Theatre in Wimbledon, children's theatre. And I remember doing a show. I think I did a Christmas show in between Playdays commitments.
Right.
So yes, there would be quite big breaks between them.
Well, Elizabeth, that's all I've got to ask you, but it's been a joy chatting to you today, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you very much. Very nice to meet you.
thank you, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.